Welcome to IT in Motion, where we make autonomous IT entertaining and informative. My name is Sun.
And I'm Josh. We're your hosts. Today we're going to be talking to Lee Koepping, who is the Principal Architect for Public Sector at ScienceLogic.
Everybody give it up for Lee Koepping! How about that, man?
How about that? Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Lee, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as Josh stated, Principal Architect for Public Sector. So I spend most of my days in public sector throughout the federal and now SLED marketplace. And I am the kind of pre-sales, guidance, a little technical, a little business, a little bit of everything, resource for the team, if you will.
Man of many talents.
Try to. Yeah.
Sure. So for those who don't know, what does SLED stand for?
State, local, and education.
All right. So kind of spanning all the public sector from
All public
the top
sector.
down to the bottom.
All the way down, yep.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about your career background.
So I've been here at ScienceLogic for almost 7 years, like in a month, 7 years.
Wow.
But fun fact, go back with the company to like customer number 3. I met the founders, Rich and Dave, and they were, I think, maybe 4 guys in a dream back then.
Yeah.
And
How it starts.
fell in love with the product because it was something I was trying to do years before. And they did it. They did it better. But yeah, I had that relationship all along the way. I was a partner for a good number of years. I bought the platform twice.
Nice.
Wow.
I was
From two different customer.
Yeah, so I was a CTO at a very large VAR, created a managed services offering and brought it in then. And later on, went and did a startup and also bought it again as another offering within that startup. So yeah, been in the ecosystem for a minute.
Very cool.
Yeah, an employee for about 7 years.
Awesome. Well, hey, we want to get to know you actually a little bit better, and we figured we would do so via scavenger hunt game. So the name of the game is really photo scavenger hunt. You're going to go through your phone, and we're going to see if you have any pictures that we call out. Make sure that none of those pictures are inappropriate. And, this is a PG type of.
I got a G phone, so
Okay.
even PG is a stretch. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we heard you're quite the sailor man.
Trying to become.
Okay.
Don't give me that title yet.
Do you have a picture of a boat on your phone?
I do. I'm sure I do. I probably have more than is healthy.
More than hell.
There we go. Yeah, there is a boat.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Oh, wow.
It's my little pride and joy.
I'm surprised you're not on that boat. Is that that's your boat?
See, I got a lot of engineer DNA in me, and so I love working on it.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Not really using it yet.
Really?
It's all about building it, fixing it, make it better, and yeah, I know I need to get it out and use it and see if all that stuff works.
That's typical engineer DNA, Why are you working on? What are you doing with all this stuff?
As soon as I'm done, I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to take it out. Maybe I should go do this.
Yeah.
It's one project after another.
Absolutely.
So funny.
All right. Next question. Next challenge. Picture of the open ocean or open water.
Oh. Well, open water is a relative term. We're talking bay, ocean, lake.
Well, you live by the bay, right?
I live on the bay.
Yeah.
Lake Mead.
Lake Mead.
Just there a couple of months ago. That's open water.
Yeah.
So
See it.
That's from a helicopter.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
That is super cool. How'd you get that helicopter? Are you friends with pilots of sorts?
I am not friends, but I pay pilots. So that's how you get those rides. Yeah.
It's about a $90 friend, huh?
Yeah, it was not an inexpensive friend that day, but it was awesome. That was like kind of Christmas in Vegas.
Sure.
Excellent. I heard you're quite a car guy yourself. Do you have a fast car of sorts on your phone?
I'm not a petrol head per se, but I've got an S4. All right, it's my official midlife crisis car.
Okay.
So not Lamborghini, but I'm past the Prius stage. So
all right.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Cool.
So do you have a picture of a fast car? That's the question.
Well, if you classify mine as fast, perhaps.
Well, the question is if you classify it as fast.
It was fast this morning. I actually got here.
Got here fast.
He was hydroplaning over here this morning.
Yeah,
with all that rain.
That is no joke. It was unexpected rain this morning.
It didn't even touch the road. It just glided through the.
Well, not car, but I do have a fast golf cart.
All right.
All right, I will count that one,
Yeah.
sir.
Car is
That's-
probably further back. I'm sure I have a picture, but that's came
That's-
across my golf cart.
There you go.
Is there a keg in the back of that? Never
There's
mind.
not a keg. No.
Okay. Good. You're responsible.
I am very
Don't drink and drive. All right. Next question for you. Picture of an older car.
Probably. Let's keep going back.
You go to the junkyard recently, look for some older cars,
I've
fix them up.
been to,
I
like,
don't know.
car shows, things like that. I guess it's older. My son's car, which is now like a 2010 GTI.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I like
it's
it.
a little
Yeah,
older.
those are nice.
Yeah.
You can zip them around everywhere. You can park them anywhere. They're
He can park him anywhere. He lives in Baltimore. It's up here, Oco City. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Probably the oldest car I have on there.
well. I guess I'll give you that one because it is all right. It's 2023. That's what, like 2010.
I think it was 10 or 13, somewhere in there. It's 10 years old.
At least 10 years old,
Easy.
yeah.
Okay, that's old enough. I
That's
guess.
old enough. We didn't say a classic car.
I don't.
That's
Yeah, if I
true.
scroll far enough, maybe there's a Model T buried. I don't know. Don't recall seeing one, but yeah.
I wish. I once saw some of those actually drive around. But it's obviously it's
Where I live now,
the
there are a
outside.
lot of classic cars.
Really?
I haven't taken many pictures, but it's a big. I'm in a rural area now, and that's what they do on Sundays. Everybody pulls their cars out of the garage. You go park them in a field and ooh and ah over each other's cars.
Sure. Yeah, there are a number of classic car shows kind of around if you know what you're looking for. People pull out their 1960s convertibles. You could land. They're like an aircraft carrier, right? You could land an airplane on the hood.
Yeah.
They're so big. All right. Next challenge: a picture with some kind of a symbol in it.
Let's see.
So you could think like, an ampersand, a point of interest symbol, one of those guidebook pictures, all kinds of stuff like that.
yeah. But no gang signs. PG, like I said.
Symbol. Let's see. Oh, I should turn sound.
Man, you got audio with it too.
Well, I just scroll. I don't see a symbol, but I had the fortune to see Paul McCartney a few months ago.
Nice.
They had all the the Beatles iconography. and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that works.
It's up in Baltimore, and so yeah, that's the section I'm scrolling through. This is very ad hoc.
Oh, that's the name of the game. It's all.
Wow, this may be sharing too much, but there's a happy birthday symbol
Oh, there you-
Okay.
yeah.
hat on a dog. Not my dog. But I got invited to a dog's birthday party, so that's my life.
The important thing is that you went.
I went.
You went.
Wow.
I want to believe it was your dog's friend. Your dog invited you, and you went to
yes,
support.
yes. That was exactly. It was a doggy birthday party, and we were on the other end of the leash. So,
Yeah, makes sense.
I would have probably been on the leash at that kind of party. All right. Next one is a picture with a large group of people. Could be at a trade show or,
Or a Paul McCartney concert might be easy.
There you go.
You want thousands of people? Let's see.
I mean, you seem like a people kind of guy, so.
I'm all right with people. Fairly large. Here we go. There's a sailing reference. So this is the folks that run the channel and also live on SV Delos. Probably one of the most successful sailing channels on YouTube. And I've met them a number of times, but the Annapolis Boat Show last year, stopped by, chatted with them for a little bit. Yeah. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Lee Koepping, the sailor guy. The sailor man, sorry.
The guy that owns a boat. Sailor's coming. 8 years in the Navy, still don't call myself a sailor because I need a little bit more sea time.
Yeah. Well, there's makers and then there's doers. I guess you're more of the maker.
I'm making so that I could do.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, we could just jump right into some of the questions that we had for you. You've been in the public sector for quite a while. Can you elaborate with us just for a little bit? When did you start in the public sector? How did that kind of evolve over time?
It wasn't purposeful. I honestly ended up there. I was military earliest part of my career in the intel community, And so I got out with a clearance, and where do you go? You become a government contractor, right?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
So a
absolutely.
little bit of time in the Pentagon, then went to DOJ and started like running help desks and IT operations and doing that at a fairly large scale,
Were
which
you
got me
doing
into this technology space. So
right?
did not start out in the technology space, but sort of faded from government into commercial, got into the IT operations space more specifically, and for a number of years, we're just building out operation centers around the country. And so that got me into this space, but it was always sort of centered around government just because I had a bit of a background and it was a fast growing area. And all of my positions since have been sort of in that orbit. So I have done some commercial things in the .com days and even since, but generally speaking, just kind of always been in the orbit of federal.
Federal space, sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things you were talking about with us recently was that there's a lot of new mandates coming out, and they kind of come out regularly. So, what are some examples of those mandates? Why are there always new mandates? Kind of what's the story behind
Well,
that?
there's government requires governance, as do most industries now. So this is not unique to government, but yeah, there are a lot of mandates. I mean, we could spend the rest of the day just going through a list and not even talking specifically about each one. So there's a lot out there, and it is hard on our customer base. Creates opportunity to how can we help with those mandates? But there are a lot, and I don't know if it's not unique to the government per se, but there are these mandates, some of which are guidelines, mandates without teeth,
Right.
some of which have teeth. And so, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of varying shades of gray in terms of consequences, which makes it very confusing for our collective customer base.
Yeah, and so how do these mandates impact the government's missions?
In most cases, it's with good intentions, right? Governance, obviously security and privacy, service to the constituents. These are all reasons for having these mandates. How they manifest, how they come across, and sort of the angst that they put on the customer base, maybe there's unintended consequences for those.
Sure.
Right.
So, but yeah, generally speaking, they're there because we trust but verify in our government agencies, and they're stewards of our tax dollars. And so a lot of these mandates and regulations are around how those are spent. In general, how they're spent for the benefit of many, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of those are very specific to our world
Right.
with technology. You have to take things like Cloud First, which is 13 years old as a mandate, as a suggestion, before cloud was really even fashionable, right?
Right.
And as recently as there's a CISA BOD directive that came out on reporting on some cybersecurity elements, and in fact, I think next couple of weeks that is actually due. That was just that's kind of how the regulations work. They come out, they've published it. It's been widely disseminated toward the end of last year, and they already have a due date. So some of those are reporting. Most of these are reporting requirements. These guidelines, so that Office of Management, OMB, can actually validate. In some cases, they scorecard agencies on their progress on these things.
Sure. Well, these mandates, it seems like they kind of roll out pretty slowly at times, though. I know that they kind of
They roll out as they roll out. They get adopted sometimes very slowly.
very slowly.
Because some of them are big initiatives, and some of them are small, and some of them require socialization, rationalization, and interpretation to really understand what I need to do. And some of them are convenient because they have you shall do this at this date. Okay, great.
Right.
Others are a little more aspirational. Hey, cloud first. You should try and go to the cloud. Obviously, there's a lot more words around it, but that's more aspirational,
General idea.
right? So how does that get adopted? It's many, many different ways.
Right. The cloud first ones, I think, been relatively successful, right? I mean, just, in government, across industry, we see a lot of push towards software as a service, platform as a service, right? These different types of ways of consuming the cloud. But then you've got stuff like the IPv6 mandate, which at this point has to be 25 years old, and
It's a little long in the tooth, yeah.
yeah, it's. I mean, IPv6 has been rolling out, but right, like the core IPv4 pools got allocated to regions over 10 years ago, and it's still dragging even in the government space, right?
Right.
So kind of what's the difference between those?
Well, I mean, IPv6 came out because obviously they saw the addressable pool not being sustainable, especially in a global climate, and this isn't just unique to the government. So along comes IPv6, but very different, very difficult to instantiate, and because of networking and the ability to obfuscate even the IPv4s, kind of kick that can down the road. Right?
Sure.
There's a lot of technologies that allow you to sort of cascade these things and mask them behind each other. So that was one of those guidelines that came out without a lot of teeth, right? So more of an aspirational goal before a lot of technology industry was even in global support. Everybody knew we were going there, but can I buy the device that supports it? The software I use to management, is it ready to go? That took an evolutionary period. Right?
There's no like hard line or date for that to be enforced, right? You said there's not a lot of teeth, so like what?
There's becoming that. So we have seen just in the last few years, agencies finally saying, yep, we're there. We're dual stack at first.
Right.
So IPv4, IPv6, and then IPv6 going away. In fact, we have customers that are using our platform to figure out where they are in that continuum. I've got 1,000 things, and only 700 even have the IPv6 address. And then as they mature the infrastructure around that and the operations, how many of the IPv4s are effectively sunsetted?
Right.
So they are actually measuring this now, and making progress. So
that makes sense. So what is the difference between like the successful agencies? Because you said there's some agencies that are there, right? They've gone dual stack and they're starting to sunset their IPv4 stuff. And there's other agencies that are just,
it's a combination of things. I think certainly all of these regulations affect different agencies in different ways. Some of them are supportive of the mission. For example, like Cloud First. Cloud First is an initiative, but there's also an initiative to consolidate data centers and eliminate data centers, mainly for economic reasons.
Right.
Some of them socioeconomical reasons. So those are two things that are sort of congruent in what they hope to achieve. And so you get these cascading, complementary, if you will, mandates and guidelines and directives, and those are going to accelerate faster.
Right.
Two birds with one stone kind of thing, right?
Right.
But I think the biggest driver is probably it's somewhere between, depending on your agency, the operational efficiency outcome of it. And again, you got to look at the outcomes, or the economic outcome.
Right.
Am I going to save money by going to the cloud? And that's not just hard costs. That could be soft costs for the more mature agencies that see that. Can I consolidate a data center that's very, very economically focused? But in today's climate, and this is, we're talking the last 3 years with the pandemic and everything else, do I want people going to a physical facility? If I'm more in the cloud, is it easier to support that? And so these mandates are looked at a little bit differently now, because you can apply different outcomes to them for other things that were unforeseen as part of the mandate.
And things are starting to change a little bit too. I read an article the other day that like some people, although we've seen a ton of cloud growth over and adoption over the last few years, I think some people are now, with the rise of AI, are like, it's going to be more cost effective for me to actually just own the infrastructure and just run it.
Yeah, AI uses a few cores, right? So I think those people that are really pushing for that in a cloud environment are realizing, AI is a thirsty beast when you're talking about infrastructure to support it. And so, that's a reality. The other thing too is, and this is a bit more unique to public sector, although I wouldn't doubt that this exists in things like pharma and financials and other sectors. For example, the mandate Cloud First didn't say cloud everything. There are a lot of things that are ultimately never going to leave the boundary, and especially in certain sub-communities within public sector, for example, the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies.
In-house.
In-house
legacy.
In-house with in-house. So those are things that, and cloud is relative. Could be private cloud. They can still consolidate data centers but achieve their objectives. But that doesn't necessarily mean public cloud first. And economics, perhaps less of an issue in those environments because security trumps everything. Sure. But then there's this operational efficiency thing. Does it make more sense to move workload to physical location, virtual location, things like that? So
it depends on
it's a Rubik's cube, right? When you think about all the different, and this is what the challenge is for our customer base. I need to do this because I'm told to do it. Some things I have to report on, so pretty black and white.
Yeah.
Some things I get great benefit out of. Some things I get very little benefit out of. And so how they prioritize all of these things it varies significantly. Right?
Do you have any like advice for, all the government CTOs that are listening or things like that on how to do prioritization?
Some things have become clear. I've learned some things watching this journey, participating in this journey, and and some of it is very common sense, which always gets lost in the wash, right? When you're dealing with lots of mandates and paper and meetings. What do I have to report on, right? What penalizes my agency if I don't report, or if I do report and the results aren't as expected? Nobody wants a penalty. Certainly not a financial one. Nobody wants a bad score published. So what are the mandates that most affect those things? And that might be a priority. Keep my agency out of the press, keep my agency from being financially penalized when dollars are tight, as they are, with the economy the way that it is, and that obviously ripples all the way into federal. So that's a natural priority that sort of has emerged. Budgets are not infinite, and things like that, right? So that's one thing. And the other is what is in the operational best interest, and that is what's going to vary greatly by agencies. Those that are adopting AI techniques and dealing with big data type stuff, you would argue the IRS and even things like, say forestry and Department of Interior, where there are a lot of analytics around, environment and impact and all this kind of stuff. So big data, right? I need to mine big data. Those guys have a different choice to make, perhaps, than another agency that's dealing with ingest of paperwork and more forms based and request based, kind of service to the constituents. It's all going to vary. But my advice to most agencies is know how to keep yourself out of the press. Know how to protect your budget, and those mandates which you're reporting on, which have teeth, which have penalties, are probably going to bubble up to the top.
Yeah,
naturally.
And so you said something there that's interesting, right? Your advice to the agencies, and in other words, we're in a world today where, as a vendor, these agencies are coming to us for advice, even in developing requirements and how to do things. And you've talked about how that's kind of a shift from the past. Could you tell everyone a little bit about that?
I mean, how we do things in our industry is changing rapidly, right? I got video going, so I can't hide the gray hair. So I've been in the industry, a bit, and I've seen all of these changes, and it's fascinating. But the only thing constant is change.
Yeah.
And the acceleration of that change, just in the last, you throw the pandemic in, that dramatically changed our whole world. It's not that telework wasn't here before, but now it's the norm, right? And that has a whole, ripple effect on the technologies that support that, the behavior, the culture, all of these things sort of impact that. But technology itself is leapfrogging in a way, look at Ohm's law. I mean, it's practically been kicked to the curb now, because while that for years was predictable and adhered to, all of a sudden we're leapfrogging it, right? The power of compute, the variety of it, things like that. So, that's why I love being in this field. I mean, you think you know it, give it a day, right? It's changing. You got to learn it all over again. Yep. It is a bit of a marathon. It's not a sprint like I felt like it was in the early days of my career, or if I could just learn it all. And then you come to the realization, I will never know it all.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah. But the change of that is maddening for an environment that has to budget 18, sometimes 24 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right. I'm planning for this. Oh, technology changed. It's more expensive, less expensive, doesn't exist, not what I thought it was, by the time you get said budget.
Yep.
And that is a really hard thing to deal with.
The lack of being able to be agile, responsive to the changes that occur.
Or convinced that you're agile and you finally figured it out and you did the market research and this is where I'm going. And by the time you're able to get there, it's yesterday's news.
It's not even relevant anymore.
Or so that is not easy to deal with as well.
Absolutely. In the public sector, what we've observed is a lot of the customers have these products that they only use about 5% of its full capacity.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because they're still operated by humans, right? So we are creatures of habit, right? And so you get a couple of factors to that. One is just that human factor. I bought something that does 100 things, but I really needed, the 100 things were very interesting. But when the rubber met the road and I start using it, I really need these 10.
Right.
And that's why I really bought it. I was just more impressed by the other 90.
Yeah.
That's why I bought that particular widget, but I'm really only using 10. So you see a lot of that. And then, again, 18, 24 month budget cycles, I'm stuck with it for a while. So I get to know it.
Yeah.
And now I don't really want to change. And change is undeniable, right? But how fast people change, how willing they are to change, pretty predictable because humans are still humans.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that is another factor. The other thing is just the ever-changing requirements, right? So in the case of government, they have in not that long a period, really, when you think about it, gone from you went to the DMV, for example, and you fill out a bunch of paperwork and you had to stand. Everything's virtual, everything's online. This is service to the constituents at speed, trying to keep up with just the app on your phone that you have as a normal consumer. That has caused a massive digital transformation across, all enterprises.
Yeah.
And so that when you're moving that fast, people will tend to not want to change because I at least know this now, and I can't afford to go into the unknown and make a mistake and disrupt service to the constituents. So that affects,
especially for mission critical.
Yeah, for mission critical, you can't afford to make a mistake, and that's why, and it's not unique to federal, but a lot of industries are still running mainframes. They're still running classic client server things because they just can't afford to break
that risk.
And then the other side of human culture kicks in. The people that knew that implemented it, they're aging. They're moving on. It's a very competitive talent market.
Yeah.
Those people that stood that up, chase the other side of the rainbow and are not there anymore. And nobody wants to change that. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Till it breaks.
Yeah.
So a lot of dynamics, and it makes a day in the life exciting. I mean, that's why you wake up every morning, is because technology itself is changing. How we approach it as a company is changing, and that's very exciting. But how we approach it as a culture, as people, is constantly changing. And then I suppose this is true of every generation, but you couple this with technology, you've got sort of the baby boomers moving out and the millennials coming in, and there's very different philosophies and work style, work approach, things like that. So there's this whole kind of social thing that isn't part of technology, but absolutely affects technology.
Yeah.
It's like I said, the only constant is change, and getting people to change has varying degrees of success. Getting people to change in a government environment has varying degrees of success. It's different than industry. They're not chasing the next job. They are staying where they're at, maybe chasing the next promotion, chasing the next pay scale, or, in some cases quite comfortable where they are and tend to resist that change. And all those dynamics just in one department, in one agency, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Lee, it's been such a pleasure having you today. Listeners, I hope you've gotten tremendous value from this, that advice for the CTOs on how to prioritize mandates. I think that's pretty important. It's pretty relevant. Hopefully, folks can really learn from that. Where can our listeners learn a little bit more about you and kind of, get to know you a little bit better and follow your, I heard you do blogs and stuff, right?
I am on, I do a lot of blogs here. So yeah, certainly at our ScienceLogic website are many of the things I published. I have not embraced as I should social media as much. I certainly have a LinkedIn page.
This is your opportunity, man.
Well, it is. This is something I am changing and evolving as well, and I'm starting to embrace that more, and looking forward to putting out more content sort of independently through that channel as well. But
just make sure you opt out on the cookies that are tracking, some of that privacy data.
Well, I had 2 hours of listening this morning about I'm not using TikTok.
Awesome. Well, great. It's been such a pleasure having you today, Lee.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Everybody give it up for Lee Koepping.
All right, thank you, Lee.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We're hosted on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Stitcher, and many other podcast applications. We release episodes on a regular cadence, and you can find our episodes at ScienceLogic.com/podcasts.